Welcome to America Uncanceled. I'm Mercedes Schlepp along with Matt Schlepp here. Well, Sunday's Grammys featured a daring performance by Sam Smith dressed as, guess what, Matt?
The devil.
The devil. Followed by the one and only Jill Biden, all sparkled up, presenting a Grammy Award to this year's most, quote unquote, progressive song.
That would be every song.
I mean, how much the Grammys have changed. Meanwhile, Disney this week has come under fire for their kids show, The Proud Family, that regularly embraces 1619 Project propaganda in its episodes. You gotta watch this. And why is the left so obsessed with Satanism? And why does Disney feel the need to indoctrinate children with subversive ideology? Well, who better to talk about these issues is a dear friend of CPAC, and we're going to hone in on talking about the cult of the woke left, is film producer and political commentator Robby Starbuck. Robby, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, so happy to be here.
Well, I think I want to jump into this unholy performance by Sam Smith.
So let me just say at the outset, I don't watch any award shows anymore. I don't even think I watch the ESPYs anymore. And I didn't know who these quote unquote performers are. But to me, this is shocking. And this is now considered entertainment. What's going on here?
Yeah, well, you and I have something in common. Not only do I think people need to make the choice not to watch these. But when I was in the entertainment business, directing a lot of the biggest stars and Oscar-winning actors, actresses, I was nominated for and won a lot of awards, including at the, VMAs, MMVAs. So I was invited to all these award shows, including the Grammys. We had a nomination for a project there. And I actually never went to any of the award shows because I knew what went on at them. I knew what went on at the after parties. I didn't even go when I won awards. They'd have to mail it to me if they wanted me to have it because it's a truly disgusting environment. Now, here's what has changed. The disgusting environment that used to exist is now out in the open. They're not afraid to put it all out there now. And I think that's sort of a marked change in the culture war where they feel that they've dominated all these institutions so thoroughly that they don't even need to pretend anymore that, they're trying to appeal to the masses. They're not. They're trying to socially program people at this point to accept something as normal that is not
Robby,
normal.
let me just ask a quick follow-up on this. So
Yeah.
what you're saying is the debauchery that would happen at like a Vanity Fair party after the Oscars or the equivalent after the Grammys or whatever award ceremony, they knew that like they needed mainstream America to buy the products and they couldn't completely offend their customer base. So like they kept it well hidden. Now they're putting it all out on the stage. Will it have the ramifications of, flyover country where people like me come from? We'll just turn this off and stop buying the products.
I think it's actually somewhat of a symptom of a larger theme we're seeing. We're seeing this in corporate America. We're seeing it all over the country where our values are totally divorced from this normative culture they're trying to create. And when that happens, it's going to result in sort of an almost balkanization of culture, and we're going to have to create our own. And I've talked about this a lot for years now, saying to, my fellow conservatives, if we want to win a culture war, we have to invest in culture. If you don't invest in it, you will lose the war. And we are starting to see those investments begin to, come to fruition in many different ways where there's different content being made and things along those lines. I think we're only going to see that continue, and same thing on the corporate side, because you can't go and compete in industry in a free market when the free market is essentially saying your ideas are not allowed, period. We will not engage with you, because there's no market to be had then. If, say, every bank won't work with CPAC because they're opposed to your values, eventually CPAC's going to need to go and work with other people to find a conservative bank that will go and work with all the different projects like CPAC, and I think that's the place we're trending toward as a society. And then I think same thing on the government level. You're seeing that in states, the mass migrations we're seeing from blue states where conservatives in those blue states are going to red states or purple states, and vice versa, where Democrats are leaving our states that are red and going to blue states. We're going to see that continue because we're seeing that our values are not a match. I mean, in any relationship, you'd get a divorce.
Yeah, I want to ask you because Kim Petras had a press conference speaking about the fact that basically saying that religion abandoned this individual and really hitting religion very hard. In essence, I mean, I really felt that this individual didn't understand really what religion is, or or even God at this matter. It almost felt like it was an attack on God. So, Robby, I mean, when you hear this, what's your reaction? I mean, clearly you're seeing Hollywood for a long time has had this hatred towards religion, and even in the music industry. Has it gotten worse with time?
Oh, absolutely. It's gotten to the point where, you know how maybe 8, 10 years ago, people were afraid to talk about their political beliefs in Hollywood? It's
Right.
not just that anymore. You used to be able to talk about your faith. If you're a Christian now in Hollywood, you better keep that to yourself. If you don't, then look at somebody like Chris Pratt. He gets dunked on constantly by the media and everybody else just for being Christian, and they assign all these other beliefs to him that he's never actually said publicly.
Right.
And I know a decent bit about what he believes in private, and it's kind of divorced from what they think in the public narrative, because they've attached all this stuff to him because they think if you're a Christian, you're all these other things. And really, this goes back to the weakness of churches, which is something I've been talking about for a long time. A lot of pastors out there have started pushing this, what I call comfortable Christianity. And it's the idea, we just saw it actually today. The Church of England is now considering making God a non-gendered person. Okay, so they would,
Wow.
and you functionally can't call yourself a Christian church anymore, but that's what's happening all over the country and the world, is this idea we need to appeal to more people by pretending we're something we're not. And that's something that has led to, in Hollywood, silence from people who should be professing their faith and should be saying, I'm unashamedly this and I believe this because of this. Because at the end of the day, what's the purpose of being Christian if you're afraid to stand up for what you believe in? It's kind of the same thing as politics, except for even worse, because if there's one thing you should never be afraid of sharing, it's your faith. And that's where we've kind of been led to. But when you listen to somebody like Kim Petras say this, I always get reminded of hurt people hurt people. And a lot of
Yeah.
these people who are hurt because of a bad experience in religion, they fail to see that they were unfortunately being led by a bad person in many cases. Not a bad God, not a bad belief system, but a bad person who misused their power or many other different things. But it's all going back to the fallibility of the human being. And people need to remember, you have one bad experience. That's not a bad experience with God, and it may be a lesson in there for you.
Yeah. Well, the biggest concern is that you have so many young people that look up to these types of celebrities, and they're delivering this kind of demonic message, really hitting hard on what's, I think, a center to Western civilization, and that of God, playing such a critical role in even the founding of our country, and in really keeping our communities vibrant. Which, as Americans are turning away from religion, you're seeing the chaos, the disorder, children that are confused by their gender and coming home from school and they're going from boy to girl, and then the parents are perplexed. And it's kind of like, go back to the basics. It's about family. It's about faith. It's about knowing that you were made in the likeness of an image of God. And that's what's being lost in this whole debate, especially when you're seeing celebrities push these demonic and chaotic messages across the board. You were going to ask a question, Matt?
Yeah, so it's funny, we're always told don't talk about politics and religion in polite company.
That's the only thing Matt and I know how to talk about, Robby. I'm
so-
sure you and your wife are the same way.
So let's switch from,
Yes, we are.
I think I agree with your theme that who would become a Christian if Christian is just warmed over secularism with a cross in front of the room, right? No real beliefs, no biblically based beliefs. Truth is relative, and it's just all about let's give everyone a hug and accept everyone. That is not the Christian message as we understand it. And then you have the Republican Party, which is a secular version of this, which is yes, we have these beliefs, and we don't believe government solves very many problems. But we can't fight on every turf, so we kind of give up on a lot of things and go along to the point where people don't see the difference between Republicans and Democrats. You, in the free state of Tennessee, are making sure that our elected officials in Tennessee, who CPAC rates, and Tennessee is always one of the most conservative states, you're making a real difference on these cultural questions. Can you explain to our audience what you're doing and how they can help?
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife, through her nonprofit Freedom Forever, they really went after the Vanderbilt story, and they broke the Vanderbilt gender clinic story that they had a pediatric gender clinic and were transitioning children. And then Daily Wire and Matt Walsh jumped on board, and they really blew the story up. And so we worked together with Matt, and did a big rally in Nashville, got all the legislators together, had conversations with the high level legislators in our state who really are the power, movers here. And we're able to get together two different bills that are going to really change the landscape in terms of protecting kids in Tennessee, but also setting a standard for the nation, because I think these are so well written that they will pass muster at the Supreme Court, which is an important test because some states make really critical mistakes in their legislation on these two fronts, and they are stopping these sex changes for kids, including puberty blockers and hormones, and then also making it illegal to take children to these sexual drag shows. And I think one of the key points here with these bills is that they're not written to discriminate against an identity group. So when it comes to the one that will make it illegal to take kids to drag shows, it's not just about drag shows. Right. We don't want kids in strip clubs. We don't want them in any sexual adult environment, period. We don't single out drag shows. It's a multitude of adult activities that children should not be at. And I think it's sort of like, I'd say one of the main pieces of pushback from the left is, I thought you guys believed in parental rights. Well, we do, but there's also a point at which the state does need to step in. Say if you're shooting your kid up with heroin or you're hooking them up to a computer and having them watch porn all day. These things are clearly illegal, and there has to be lines in society where we step in to protect kids.
Well, the other thing, Robby, is a lot of these activities are taking place in taxpayer-funded entities, schools, libraries, people that take federal funds and state funds. So, the idea that this is just like private activity is belied by where they're having these shows.
Absolutely. And even if they are private activity, this is another one of those things where whether you do it in private or public, if you shoot your kid up with heroin, it's still illegal, and that's kind of the way I see these drag performances, because you're sexualizing and exploiting kids who are not able to truly consent to being in a sexual environment because they're children. Kids can't consent to sex or to being sexualized or to be exposed to sexual behaviors. It's just not possible. And it doesn't matter if their parent thinks it's okay. It's still not okay. It wouldn't be okay to buy them a prostitute. It's not okay to take them to a strip club. And it's not okay to take them to a drag show where a man strips down to his underwear and shakes his private parts at them.
Well,
I also think it's not okay to take them to the Grammys anymore, but that's just me.
Yes.
Okay?
But it's not okay to, at 7 years old, push puberty blockers on these children, on these innocent children that have no idea what the long-term repercussions are of this. We know that puberty blockers lead to all sorts of developmental issues. It's so tragic to watch many of these individuals who were transitioning at a young age and are now detransitioning and are not even, in many cases, these girls, they can't have kids.
That's right.
And it's just a tragedy.
Right. In fact, I would add to your point, the only long-term things that we do know are all negative. There are no facts long-term that favor ever giving these things to kids. And when you look at it long term, I mean, the numbers for suicide are just as bad as before you do any of this stuff, if not worse in some of the studies they've done. So there's absolutely no efficacy. And then you add all the physical ailments that come along with it, or infertility. And it's just, I mean, there's no excuse. This is abuse. And so it's got to stop. And that's why we're going to keep fighting in Tennessee to make this the state that is the safest for kids and, really stands up for our American values and doesn't cede any ground.
So at CPAC, we score all these votes. So, Robby, we're right there beside you. We are on the Marjorie Taylor Greene bill to use the federal government to prevent kids from being exploited by this radical gender ideology. So we're going to be scoring that vote as well. And, I think what's key for the people listening is to know that information on all these bills is on our website. We have petition campaigns to help in these efforts. And I guess my final question for Robby would be, do you have hope that on some of these questions, these basic cultural questions about what do we have in common as a people, do you have hope that we're turning the tide? Can we beat the Walt Disney Company?
I think we can. But it's about building these alternatives, and it's why it's so important. I tell, conservatives, we have to understand our weaknesses and our strengths, and we have a lot of strengths, but one of our weaknesses has been really rallying around creation of, alternative cultural lanes. And that means, going and supporting creators that you find interesting, whether it be a musician, whether it be somebody doing a film project, or, something as simple as even CPAC, going to CPAC, because all of these things contribute to a different culture that gets built that provides opportunities for young people, especially. I mean, there's so many lanes that we need to open up for young people, because if you look at just the psychology of a child, they are inundated with 99% of the time stuff from the left culturally. And we've got to start to take back some of that ground. So I am confident that we're going to be able to take some of that back. The question is, the power players in our party, how involved are they going to get? What type of investments are they going to make in this arena to make sure that we're not just a conservative party that can win in 2024, but that we're a party that can continue to win into the 2040s and 2050s and 2060s?
He's a grandfather, and Matt and I will be in a home. So let me ask you, Robby, real quick.
2060. I don't think I'm going to be in a home, sweetheart.
I don't think you'll be around. You'll be hopefully in heaven.
I think a shrub will be growing from me. I'm not sure.
She's going to put you there.
I got to ask you, Robby, because Disney, they released a show on Disney Plus called The Proud Family. I could not believe when I saw this video of these cartoon, these kids basically destroying America, talking about white privilege, talking about systemic prejudice, racism. It sounded like an indictment of America. And then even going after Abraham Lincoln. I mean, I felt that it was such a divisive type of language. What's your initial thoughts on that in terms of how Disney has really lost its way on anything from gender ideology to pushing just more of this racist America?
It's infuriating. I mean, my family and I would encourage every other family out there to do what my family is doing. We have not given a dime to Disney, period, for anything. We don't buy their movies. We won't go there. We won't do any of this stuff. As long as they want to push this, Marxist ideology on our country, you have to consider them an enemy. And I really mean that. I mean, they are an enemy to our cultural well-being, our children's well-being, our country's well-being. And so is the ideology that they've embraced that they believe should be the dominant one in our country, and we can't allow that to happen. And your family's Cuban, my family's Cuban, and what I think about when I saw this clip,
which makes us perfect, Schlapp, for the
okay,
record.
whatever.
Yes.
Whatever.
What I think about when I see a clip like this, though, is just the very basic reality that if America didn't exist, I would either be dead or in a jail.
That's right.
If I had my values in the country my family's from. And you would be too. And those are just stark realities. America exists and has a very beautiful purpose because of the brilliance of our founders. And to tear that all away and turn it into something disgusting and evil, and this idea that we're a hateful country when we are the freest, kindest, least racist country on the planet, is just frankly disgusting to me. And it always tells me one very important thing about the person on the other side. They have not been around the world. I've been all over the world, and I can tell you affirmatively, this is the least racist country I've ever been in. And I would say the worst racist country I've ever been to is China. And it's not particularly close. It's an incredibly racist country. And the stuff they do there, it just blows my mind. They're able to do the business they do with corporations in America.
Including Walt Disney, that does business with China.
Yeah, so let me talk about the Walt Disney Company. I say the Walt Disney Company because Walt Disney was a Republican. Walt Disney voted for Barry Goldwater over Lyndon Baines Johnson. Walt Disney created a company that was supposed to be encouraging of lessons that you teach young people as they become functioning Americans. Walt Disney was a patriotic guy. Walt Disney, the company, used to come to CPAC every year. They helped sponsor our green room. They worked with us on policy questions like intellectual property and basic questions like that. And within a nanosecond, with a short period of time, like a lightning bolt, they abandoned all these principles and they went fully woke. And I think it's important for people to understand this. That's how fast these companies are shifting on you. And if you don't think that they're enemies to your family, to our country, you need to rethink your priorities, because if you go to the Disney parks, that is the main source of their income, and everything else are these parks. And you're funding all of this. And they're not so bad at the parks and stuff to put it right in front of your face. That's tomorrow. That will be happening soon. But if Walt Disney was alive, he would be shocked at what he's seeing happening in the company he founded.
I can drive that point home for you. A family member of Walt Disney has actually reached out to me this year, and we've had a number of conversations, and they've told me in no uncertain terms, Walt would be rolling in his grave if he knew what was going on now today. And you're absolutely right. And this starts in the DEI departments at most of these corporations. That's been one of the great poisons that is really killing our country, is these DEI initiatives and ESG initiatives. They're poisonous, and they're toxic to free markets. They're toxic to capitalism because, frankly, they're really a perversion of it. And I think that it's something that we've got to stop. We've got to stop these DEI initiatives and movements and the ESG initiatives.
Well, think about these great founders. Walt Disney, his company is now saying that the fight for abolition and the end of slavery in this country, which was led by Abraham Lincoln, that somehow that was a racist effort. That's insane. And you have Sam Walton with Walmart funding 9 months of abortions for their employees. Like, this is insane what's happening. We ought to rethink every dollar we spend.
Yeah.
Robby, thanks for joining us. We always love it when you hang out with us and come to CPAC and everything else. And thanks for all the great work you're doing. And remember, to all of you, that we've expanded to the podcast world. You can listen to America Uncanceled with Matt and Mercy Schlapp wherever you get your podcasts. Also, get your tickets for CPAC. It's coming up. It's literally less than a month away. We're announcing all kinds of great speakers. It's March 1st through 4th. It's back here because we're going to reclaim Washington, D.C. It's our capital, too, and you need to come back here and join us at CPAC, and we're going to take this country back. I know it's hard to be hopeful, but I am. And we'll see you all soon.